Hi, my name is Muhammad Shahir Imran Marasdan and my metric number is 150402. Okay, so in this video, I will demonstrate how to use aseptic technique and streaking techniques to transfer bacteria from broth in the test tube to the agar plate. Okay, so I will explain a little bit about aseptic technique and streaking technique before I proceed with the demonstration. Okay, so aseptic technique actually we can call it as a sterile technique. It is actually a procedure for transferring bacteria from one vessel to another vessel without introducing new microorganisms or contaminating the culture. Okay, so it is important, especially when we deal or when we work with microorganisms, since we want in the culture that we use, there are only our selected microorganism only. So by using a proper aseptic technique, we can reduce the risk of contaminations of the culture and we get our desired microorganism only. Okay, while streaking technique is a technique that we can use to isolate microorganism from the mixed culture. Okay, so we use streaking technique when we want to isolate from mixed culture into another plate to get a pure culture of microorganism that we desire. First of all, I want to tell that some of the apparatus and material is just a model and not a real one. Since I'm not in the lab and I'm lack of apparatus and materials, so I use a model to represent the real apparatus and materials that I will use in my demonstration. So this is a few materials that I will use, which is we have a Bunsen burner, we have a Petri dish with agar plate, okay, with agar nutrients. I'm sorry. Okay, we have test tube wrap and we have mixed culture of um, Staphylococcus aureus and E. coli. Okay, in the test tube. Okay, we have a pen marker, inoculating loop, disinfectant, and we have a tissue. Okay, there is a few precautions when we want to start our experiment. First, we need to remember to wear a lab coat and a pair of gloves to prevent infection of microorganisms and to avoid contaminations on our workbench. So, first, we also need to spray disinfectants on our workbench and use a white tissue. Okay, white tissue. White. Okay, this is to avoid or to make sure there is no dust and no contaminations on our table. And after we finish, we can throw our tissue in our bin. Okay, so this step is very important in early stage of our experiments because it is to make sure there's no dust and contaminations on our workbench. Okay, first we need to label our information on test tube and nutrient agar plate. Okay, to label the test tube, we need to write the information on a piece of paper by using a pen marker. Okay, so the information that we need to write is our name, which is I use a short form, and the name of the bacteria. Since I use Staphylococcus aureus and E. coli in this experiment, I write it as S. aureus and E. coli, and don't forget to put the date today. Okay, so this one is uh, what I already write, and I put it on here, stick it on here, and then we need to put the test tube on the test tube wrap. Okay, so to label the nutrient agar plate for streaking technique, since we have four sections, okay, we need to label it as A, B, C, and D. So first, we label it as A at the bottoms of the agar plate, A, and we rotate, we write it as B, rotate again, 90 degrees, C, rotate again, and write it as D. Okay. Okay. So, the reason why I label the A, B, C, and D at the bottom and at the edge. Okay, for the bottom, we don't want the information to be lost in case the cover of the plate is lost. So we don't want the information to lose. So that's why we put the label at the bottom of the agar plate. Okay, so for the reason we write the label at the edge of the agar plate. Okay, that one is to avoid interference of our observations. Okay, okay. After that, we need to light up our Bunsen burner. Okay, we need to put our Bunsen burner at the center of our workbench. Okay, make sure the valve at the bottom of the Bunsen burner is closed, and after we set the gas, we will hear a hiss sound, and after that we can ignite our Bunsen burner. Okay, then we can adjust our flame by adjusting the valve to control the amount of oxygen that enter the Bunsen burner. Okay, so we use the blue flame, especially in the middle of the blue flame, which is it is the hottest flame in this experiment, so that the flame can kill the microorganism during the aseptic technique. So it is very important to make sure that we work near the Bunsen burner because the Bunsen burner will create a sterile environment for our experiment, but make sure to keep a certain distance so that we can avoid any accident to occur. Okay, we need to sterile our loop by holding it in the flame of Bunsen burner. Okay, until it glows red. It is very important because we need to kill any unnecessary microorganism on the loop to avoid contamination by using the flame. Okay, so after that we let the loop to cool down first for a few seconds, because if we take the loop and we put it inside our broth, it will kill our microorganism. Okay, we can say that our loop is actually too hot. If we put inside our broth, it sizzles, or if we put in agar nutrients, the agar nutrient will melt. So okay, so there's one thing that very important. After we sterilize our loop, don't put our loop on the workbench because we want to avoid any contaminations to our experiment. Okay, so when we hold the loop or transfer the bacteria, make sure we don't talk to make sure that there's no contamination, because a bacteria will come out from our mouth. Uh, but for this experiment, because I want to explain, so I will talk. Okay. Then by holding the loop with our dominant hand, we pick up our mixed broth culture here. Okay, with another hand. Okay. Then we open the cap. Okay, after that, we need to flame the mouth of our test tube for a few seconds, but make sure that we don't flame it for too long, because it will cause the test tube to crack. Okay, so then we will put our sterile loop that already cooled down inside our test tube to take the loop full of microorganism, and make sure we get a drop of broth. Okay, so ready, get. Okay, flame it again, flame the test tube again on the flame. Okay, for a few seconds, but not too long, and then we close the cap. Okay, like this, and make sure to put the test tube on the rack again. Okay, for this part we will use a stacking technique where we already labeled before. So we take our agar plate. Okay, then carefully lift the lid of agar plate, but make sure not fully open, so that the agar plate does not contaminate because of surrounding area. Okay, so uh, then we put our inoculating loop and carefully streak the loop back and forth. And okay, after that we close the lid back and make sure to flame the inoculating loop again. This is to make sure that the excess bacteria on the loop is killed. Okay, so we want to avoid any contamination again on our agar plate. Okay, after we have done, we rotate our agar plate 90 degree, and this one we will streak again on section B. Okay, after our loop already cooled down, and to make sure that our loop already cooled down, we can test it on the center of our agar plate. If the agar plate does not melt, so it is ready cool down. Okay, so this one is ready. Okay, so we will streak again back and forth on section B. Okay, but we don't need to take another loop full of microorganism, but we need to overlap the section A a few times. Okay, then we need to immediately close the plate again, and then we need to flame again the inoculating loop until it glows to kill the excess microorganisms. Okay, then we repeat again for section C. When the loop already cooled down, we will streak it on section C. Okay, and overlap a little bit on the section B. Okay, okay, done. We will close again the lid. Okay, then we will use the flame to sterile the loop again to make sure there's no excess microorganisms. Okay, okay, then the last one, which is section D, we will streak again. We will open a little bit and streak again on section D and make sure to overlap a section C a little bit. Okay, done. Okay, then we flame it again to make sure we kill all the microorganisms. Okay. Okay. So this is the striking technique that we use. Uh, we streak it at the section A a little bit, and then section B, section C, and section D. After we finish everything, we need to position our agar plate in inverted place. Okay. So the reason why we invert our agar plate is to prevent the water that condense on the top of the cover to drop on the agar plate to avoid the contaminations of our agar plate lah. Okay, so after we finish all this procedure, we need to off the Bunsen burner. Then we clean our workbench with disinfectant again. Okay, then use a tissue to wipe our workbench. This is very important because we want to make sure there's no excess or any microorganisms that we use on our experiments to be on our workbench. Okay, so let me recap what is very important things that we need to make sure, or precaution that we need to make sure we do during our experiment. So first we need to make sure that we wear a glove and a lab coat during the experiment. Okay, so this is to prevent the infections or contamination during and after experiments. And the second, we need to make sure that we need to spray disinfectants, okay, disinfectants on our workbench, which we want to make sure there is no dust or contaminated before we do the experiment. And after the experiment, we need to make sure there is no microorganisms from our experiment on the workbench. Okay, so this one is to prevent the infections and contaminating ourselves. Okay. Third, we need to flame our inoculating loop every time we use it, which is before and after the experiments, because we want to prevent the bacteria from contaminating our culture and workbench, and make sure to flame the inoculating loop last time again before we put it on our workbench. Okay. Fourth, do not fully open the agar plate so that the contamination from surrounding environment does not contaminate the agar plate, and make sure to close immediately after we strip the agar plate. Okay. Five, we need to work near the Bunsen burner because Bunsen burner create a sterile environment for our working place. So it will reduce the risk of contaminations of our experiment, but we need to make sure to avoid we need to make sure to set a certain distance to avoid any accident to occur. Lastly, do not talk during our experiment because we don't want bacteria from our mouth to contaminate our agar plate and inoculating loop. Okay, so I hope this video not only used for assignment purpose but also it can be used as educational purpose, and I hope that you guys can learn about streaking and aseptic technique from this video if any of you guys watch this video. Thank you.